Alrighty. So this is a review. We talked about this before. This would be at the end of the last video you have. Intervals, again, they're the distance between any two notes. C to D, 1, 2, we call that a second. I'm pretty sure I said, but we can even qualify it more. Second is general. We could call it a major second or a minor second, but that's too much information for now. You will not need that this class. Later on, we're going to learn about half steps and whole steps, and that's related to what I'm saying. So we did seconds and thirds, we did them melodically, we did them harmonically. Melodic is like a melody, one note at a time. Harmonic comes together. That's the difference. And once again, there's not a quiz on this. This is just, if you're going into theory, remember this, because there is a quiz on this in theory. All right, here we go. I'm just going to go through the things. C position. Clair de la Lune. That would repeat. I'm not going to repeat it. I did that before. You can just listen how it goes in case you still need to work on it. Pink boxes. Piano, mezzo forte. Piano means soft. It's Italian. Mezzo forte is two words. Mezzo, that means moderate. Forte, that means loud. So in music, in an instrument, we can play very loud, medium loud, somewhat loud, kind of neutral. And these are relative things. My loud is not necessarily the same as your loud. Soft, very soft, and really, really soft. P is pianissimo, and there's even 4 Ps, which is ridiculous, because that would be like, I hear somebody's got something going on out there. It sounds like a big old loud vacuum. No idea. I got some windows open. Alrighty, so moving on this page, Tisket a Tasket is the hardest one, I believe, partially because most people are right-handed and it's left hand, and partially because something about in line 2, skipping from the 2 to the 4, I think until you're used to that, that's a little hard. I'm just going to play it through without really comments. I gave the comments last time. If it helps you, if you're working on this and because there's no letter names written in, take your old friend a pencil, lightly write in, make it so you can erase it if you make a mistake, or if later you want to come back and see if you can do it without. Don't put those big old dents in it that you can't erase. There was one more thing I wanted to say. What was it? I forget. I'll think of it. There was just like a little comment that I was going to mention. All right, I know what it was. It was about page 25. Page 25, it's part of the theory. This book is lessons, that's the songs, technique. The songs partially give you technique, but there are specific separate exercises that do. Some in the very beginning intro, walking up, walking down, when you're just learning to read music, some of that is technique. But as we go back further, there are some more that are technique, and some might overlap. Like if you play melodic intervals, you're learning the notes, so it's kind of theory, but the playing part is the technique, so there can be overlap. If you are required to take theory for your degree, or if you're really interested and want to continue, the theory is super important. If you're just doing this for fun, you're really not sure you're going to continue, or maybe you think you might continue, but you're just too busy, don't worry as much, except in the beginning, some of these pages, the writing pages, will really help you get oriented. If you ever do a writing page and you're stuck, take a screenshot and send me, I'll explain. All right, we're on the harmonic intervals. Once again, I've played through these 2 pages. Here we go. They slapped a repeat sign on that, as they did all over the place. If you do it, I would repeat for that practice, unless you've totally gotten it and you're just doing a little bit of review. Let me mention again, when a second occurs, 2 notes side by side, they share a stem. Now, let me just say this too, because I like to, if I ever say something that might have an exception down the road, I like to say something. There is an exception. 2 notes could be a second, but not share a stem. But that would be most likely in choir music, where the sopranos had 1 note with stems all going up, and the altos had notes with the stems going down. We will never see that. In our book, in basic piano, you'll never see it. If you get to really advanced piano, it's possible you could see it. But it would be in the context of 2 separate lines occurring, 2 separate melodic lines occurring on one staff, where the composer or arranger was trying to show how one voice goes. You don't have to worry about that, but I don't want anyone to ever think down the road that I left stuff out. Okay, we are moving. Oh, good heavens, did I play it? I was blabbing so much. Did I play it? Did I play that? I think I did, didn't I? Did I play the, all right. I'm thinking I did, but oh my gosh, I don't want to leave something out. Rockin' intervals, you got your quarter rests going on. They're like little squigglies. Forte, to the right is a pink box. That means loud. On the other page, we had mezzo forte, somewhat loud. Many of you have keyboards, you can't do this. Don't worry about it. Alrighty. We got the quarter rest going on, and we have an accompaniment part that is comprised of some of these intervals, seconds and thirds. Alrighty, page 27, measuring harmonic seconds and thirds. When you get to this page, make sure you pay attention. They're not all the same seconds and thirds as the previous page. The first 2 measures, right hand starts like it did in the other song. Then left hand comes in, but it's different notes, a different second. And if we actually, let's say we analyze it, meaning we kind of look a little more deeply, we try to figure out what's going on, we can say, oh, the left hand is playing CD, just like the right hand played CD. And so it's kind of the same, but lower in the left hand. Then if we look at measures 3 and 4, this is new, but this isn't. What they're doing is they're kind of taking something that you learned with a very tiny little example, and they're giving you more examples. Hopefully you've all tried this. If for whatever reasons you have not yet worked on page 26, you might want to work through this at a different time than this. It really depends on you. Some people will have no trouble. I like to spread it out, because my experience is lots of times people are looking either at the numbers or they're looking second, third. They're not actually looking at the notes on the staff. So just that's what you have to do. There's helping information there for you, but your eye has to go to the notes. Alrighty, bottom of the page is just like the top, except there's a different rhythm. So that's where we left off. Now, we're expanding intervals. We're learning a few more. We're learning fourths and fifths. They're a little bit bigger, and a fifth is bigger than a fourth. How would we find a fourth? We would count 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm playing C to F, but I could start on a different note. For now, just white notes. Limited data for now. Let's say I start on an A. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a fourth. Doesn't matter where. If we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a fifth. We're going to have first melodic, then harmonic. So here we go with the melodic fourths and fifths. This is going to feel different because if your hand, instead of like playing, I don't know if you can see this, 1, 2, 1, 3, they're kind of close. You're going to go 1, 4, 1, 5. So it's just going to be a different movement of your hand. Here we go. I'm going to repeat this. You might want to, in your practicing, just go through one hand first, rather than doing the whole thing with the back and forth with the hands. The next song, Good King, no one can ever say this, Wenceslas. It's kind of like a winter thing, a Christmas thing. It's a melody most people have heard. If you haven't, it's not really tricky. It kind of emphasizes those fourths. So you have some repeated notes in a step. And you're going to go down a fourth. They're just emphasizing that. And if you have your book in front of you, if you look at that, they give you the starting note as an F. And then they don't give you any more information all line. Second line, same thing. Now, how do you read? If you're really new to reading, how do you do this? There's a couple ways, and over time, it's kind of good to work a little bit I didn't say that right, work a little bit with both ways. One way, and this is the way I was taught as a child. I think I was 6, so I really don't remember it much. All I remember is like having my hands in the middle and learning Mr. Middle C and playing a couple notes. That's all I remember. There's a 5-year gap until I remember my piano lessons. So memorizing notes, both on the keyboard, like knowing that's an F. And once again, this harkens back to the beginning when we talked about how do you find a C? How do you find an F? How do you find a D? If you're not good with that yet, keep working. 2 black notes, D's in the middle. That's a good one to know. 2 black notes, D's in the middle. That's an easy one. But you need to know where they are on the piano, and then you need to know which notes on the staff, what their letter name is, which one corresponds to which. So that's one way. And if I were doing that, what my brain would think, until this was automatic, would be F, 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 G, F, F, C. My eye would follow along, moving left to right, and as I see one presented in my brain, I would think the letter, and as I think the letter, my hand, which would be in position, would play the letter. So that's one approach, and that's a good approach, but there's another approach. I cannot recall being taught this as a child. That is reading by interval. And the way I would approach that, like by saying what I would think and ultimately just do, would be F, it repeats, up a step. I wouldn't even have to call it a G. Down a step, repeat, down a fourth. Obviously, you can't do that until you've worked through the intervals. That's called reading by interval. And of course, if a note repeats, that's the easiest note to recognize. So in the beginning, you might want to kind of tune into how far apart they are. Always notice when they repeat. Another good thing to notice is when they go up and come right back to the same note. That makes it easier. Now, when they go down a certain distance and your hand's in one position, it's going to be really easy. Once we get to the point where your hand is going to reach a little bit for some notes, it won't feel quite so easy because eventually you learn your hand can be in any position. Excuse me. But let's do the whole thing. In measure 2, we're going to skip down a fourth. And in measure 3, we're going to walk up between a fourth. It's going to kind of outline the fourth. So here we go. How might you start this? Like most things we do, probably with a small amount, maybe 2 measures, half a line. So you might look at that, you'd see the F, and you'd see it repeats. You can think up a step, or you can think that's a G. If you look at it and you're kind of testing yourself and you're not sure, you can peek at the top of the page. You can look at the example where some of these letters were written out. What you can do is if you do it a few times and you can't remember, you can just pencil in a little bit. Alrighty. Do it a couple times. Like, so you're doing a small section, do it a couple times. Then move on. If you find you're making a mistake, make it even a smaller spot. So that's how you can approach it, slowing it down a little bit, repeating a small spot. And if you get stuck, you could circle a note that you keep forgetting or pencil it in. Bottom of the page is weird. I find it like a weird little example. It's kind of silly. It's a pun, and I love puns, but this is such a stupid pun. And because I assume most of the students in the class don't really know what this is about, I like to explain it because it's really dumb. But if you don't have it explained, it's even dumber. So it's called My Fifth. The song, or the tiny little, bitty little song, it's focusing on those skips of the fifth. That's skipping up a fifth. Same thing is going to be in the left. Now, probably most of you have heard of Beethoven's Fifth. Everyone's heard of Beethoven, right? If you ask people, what composers do you know? They're going to say Beethoven, Chopin, Brahms. If they don't study piano, they're not going to know Chopin, but everybody knows Beethoven because of... Right? You've all heard that? That is the coolest piece. Beethoven's Fifth. Now, My Fifth, dumb little pun, it's comparing, this is my fifth. Maybe you've heard dumb. Second line. Beethoven's fifth is only a third. Get it? It's a joke, and honestly, it is so dumb. I don't know why they put it in there. I laugh at puns. I didn't think that was funny. Okay, that being said, normally in the class, when I go over the top of the page, first class, I don't go over this. Second class, I add it. I explain what it is. It's not even that funny. I've never had one person laugh. I sure don't laugh. I would suggest that you work on the fourths and fifths and get the good King Wenceslas down. Depending on your time, depending on how you feel you learn, I'm going to definitely suggest that you work through it, but maybe not at the same time. You know what I mean? If it seems hard, put it off the next day, give it a try, and just make sure you can see those fifths. They're further apart on the page, and that means vertically. We're moving left to right. That distance is not part of what I mean by further apart. I mean low to high. They're further apart. So if we look at page 29, what do we have? Measuring melodic fourths and fifths. This is really important. If you are new to reading music, this gives more explanation of how to recognize a fourth or a fifth. I'm just going to mention a few of the details. A fourth will always go from one line to a space or one space to a line. It can't go any other way. The reason for that is the spaces in the line are a very specific pattern. It goes line, space, line, space. I don't know here. Line, space. Oh, sorry, I have a boo-boo finger. I got to cut that bandage off. I was outside working and it got all messed up. But yeah, boo-boo finger. All right, line, space, line, space. In fact, you know what's really cool? This is how it started. There was a man named Guido d'Arez. I think it might have been 1500s. Monk. Of course he was a monk, because everybody in the 1500s was either a monk or a peasant or a king, right? And the monks would sing, and there was no written notation. And I mean, even with words, only the scribes. Yeah, there was monks, peasants, kings, and scribes. They were smart people who got educated, and they would somehow put little scratches down on paper. But they were trying to remember songs. How do you remember the skips? It's not just like you have to know 5 or 6 songs. When you had to know lots and lots of music, he developed this system where he would show if the notes were farther apart. So that's kind of cool. Little factoid from history. Alrighty, back to playing. You know, man, I wish I had scissors. I don't have scissors here. So this is going to be in the video. My falling off band-aid that's dirty because I was moving dirt around in my garden. That's got to get cut off. All right. To continue, back to fourths and fifths. A fifth will always be, leave away the band-aid, line to line or space to space with one skipped over in the middle. Please look that over. That will really help you recognize this. Now in the middle, there are, if you don't know the book, 2 keyboards. There's a letter written in, and what they want you to do is to count up 1, 2, 3, 4 and write the letter name in. That's a great exercise. It really kind of gets you into thinking of how many apart are there. So do that unless you already can read. We're close to where we're stopping today. In fact, we're doing great with time. Harmonic fourths and fifths. Same as what we looked at, but like a harmony together. Then we're going to go to our first 2 hands actually playing song in the book. And you know what? Because you're the fall term, you'll actually be able to play this Jingle Bells. It'll be something fun you can play over the holidays. And then we're going to get into the harmonic and a little bit more with that, and then we're going to wrap up for today. So here we go. Our harmonic fourths and fifths, this is page 30. Now, Jingle Bells, I'm going to play it all through for you. Then I'm going to break it down. Here we go together, both hands. Let me warn you, it's a simple version. It's not rockin'. It's just simple because it's your first 2-hand song in the book. Now it sounds kind of bare bones, kind of thin. That's because there's limited resources to work with at this point. They're making, during the first line, when the harmony is really a C chord, they're making it just an interval. The right hand note fills in the chord. That's a C chord. That's a C chord, but the C is now up here. But the left hand doesn't have a chord, so it doesn't sound quite as full. Now, don't go deciding that you're just going to put the chord there to fill it out, simply for the reason that I want you to learn to read music, and plus, it's the kind of a thing you want to learn attention to detail. There's nothing wrong with learning something and interpreting it then your way, but when you're in learning mode, it's important that you really try to stick to what's there. So later on, if you do want to improvise, you can be clear about what's there and what you're adding. I am going to play you the first two lines a little fancier, not a lot, but there's a certain spot that I want you to hear. And that spot, if you have your book, it's in line 2, in the third measure. I'm going to show you this first. That sounds terrible. It's like, it doesn't sound good. Why is that? Because it's an interval that's dissonant. This is the octave. They blend together. This is a ninth. They don't blend as well. Now, some intervals blend great. Some blend okay. What happens, if I were to play the full version, that would sound great. It would sound full because you would have the full chord and a seventh, and that happens to be the ninth. So here is line 2, a little bit fuller and fancier. That sounds a lot better, even though it's still kind of simple. That being said, I am going to focus on 2 lines today, breaking it down. When we're done that, we're going to do the top of 31, and that's where we're going to stop for today. Then next class, I will do some reviewing, and we'll focus more on the last 2 lines and the bottom. So here we go. If this is brand new, what do you do first? You're hearing it now. That should help. If you forget, it might be good to listen again. You can listen through, you'll get the Zoom replay, you'll have this. I also included some songs. I'm going to have to go back and double check how many are there. I am going to have usually 2 videos for every song here from YouTube, in addition to what I do, that will just help you when you need to refer for one song. So how would you start? Probably with melody. Let's do 1 line. Measure 3 is going to be harder because there's more movement. So you would just, you would do it more, that part, and then put it together. Then let's do second line. I'm going to warn you, second line for most beginners is much harder. It's not super hard to play. What's hard is to keep track because there's 5 Fs and then 4 Es. So go in small sections. When you're starting that, I would suggest you would actually count, use your finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you're doing 5, and then there's going to be, in that group, that measure, there's going to be 3, but there's going to be 1 more in the next measure. So there's the 4, here's our 5, then there's 3 Es, 1 more, then 2 Ds. Work that step by step. We're going to move on for now. You try it a little bit. We're going to come back and do it again. Starting in measure 3. It's an E. It goes down by a step, repeats, and goes up by a step. Then it comes back down, skips up a 4th. The first line, left hand. That's all it does. You can do that till the cows come home. Second line, it changes every measure. This always throws people off. Go slow, be careful. We'll come back and work more on this next time. So there's two intervals, a fourth and a fifth, then single notes. Line 2 and line 4 are going to be the hardest lines. They're probably going to be 3 or 4 times as hard to put them together. They're going to need more work. So get started. Get started early so you can just do a little bit, and get familiar. Last thing for today is we're just going to peek at the top of 31. That kind of compares with 30, fourths and fifths, except just like we did for seconds and thirds, there's going to be some different ones. That's like the previous page, but guess what? This is a little different. So you might want to do one measure of each couple times, or you might want to do 2. Repeat that till it's comfortable. Then we jump to measure 3. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's right. And repeat that. The bottom of the page is going to go over all the intervals in different patterns. That's going to take more work. If you're good with all this stuff, you might want to peek at it. I will go over it next time. Generally, I tell people it's not really like a song. It's kind of an exercise. It's somewhat like, oh, it's arbitrary. It's just throwing all the intervals in. And when I teach it, I usually do 2 measures at a time because they're kind of like echoes. So it's kind of like 4 little itsy bitsy exercises all strung together. So we're near the end of our time. I'm going to stop this.